Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football. This is Scott Morgan, off the Motor City Mad Mouth. Glad to be joined by my co-host, Ryan Skolrud and Xavier McKnight, represents the third one in the booth. How you doing, fellas?
Doing all right. Excited for another week of football.
Yeah, are we excited about tonight's Thursday night game? I can actually count those amount of wins on my finger. Or if you go to a donut shop, you might be able to get the round visual of a donut. Or if you're a Jewish person, how about the bagel, that thing called this? And it represents the New York Jets and the Denver Broncos. How about Thursday night football, goose egg style?
Well, honestly, in my opinion, no matter how bad this game is, it'll be better than watching that debacle that we had to go through on Tuesday night for anyone that actually watched the presidential debate. I will watch the two worst football teams in the NFL over that any day of the week.
You know, I've heard that a lot this week. The only thing that's taken me from that presidential debate is I was doing a couple of broadcasts, but I haven't heard a lot of good things. In fact, on the Sports Exchange before we took air, Mel Farr was asked to predict a football game, and he referenced the debate. So I have a feeling that the common denominator or theme here with tonight's broadcast is the presidential debate that was, and I don't want to get into some language that would cause me to get into explicit territory, but I'll take your word for it, Mr. Skolrud.
It was terrible. Both sides. It was horrible. So
that's what we have to look forward to the next 4 years, right?
I will add my sentiments to this simply by saying that I agree with Ryan. I'm not going to go any further than that.
Okay.
God bless America and the people of America. I'll leave it at that. That's all I'll say in regards to that.
That's pretty much all I wanted to say too.
In regards to your question about the Thursday night football game, Scott, no, absolutely not. I am not watching that garbage tonight. We have playoff baseball that is going on instead. So I will be watching playoff baseball when this is over, as opposed to watching that garbage known as the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets, especially those god-awful New York Jets.
Don't tell that to Mike Greenberg of ESPN, but I agree with you.
I'd tell it to Mike Greenberg. I don't have a problem saying that to him.
So. Oh, I wouldn't either. Hey, you know what? He's a fellow Jewish guy like I am, although I don't act the part a lot of times, but we're not going down that territory. I'll be getting into no comment territory, and I'm not doing that tonight. So with that said, we'll utilize the only baseball analogy that this show will get. We're going to let Ryan Skolrud lead off.
All right, so obviously the big story in the NFL right now is the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers and Tennessee Titans game for this week has been moved back. There has not been an official word of when that game is going to be played, but the rumors that I've seen kind of around, milling around Twitter, I think from Adam Schefter and possibly from Ian Rappaport, what is that the game will move, I want to say, to week 8 or week 7, and the week 7 game between the Steelers and the Ravens will move to week 8, because the Ravens, I believe their bye is week 8, so their bye would move from week 8 back to week 7, and the Titans and Steelers game would move from this week in week 4 to week 8 instead. And that way everyone can still get a bye week in and not have overlapping problems with the schedule. Now, again, a lot of this would be dependent on, other teams not getting any other breakouts or anything. So what helps with all of this, having the NFL actually announce that this game is getting rescheduled, that it's not going to be this week, and them doing it this morning, is the fact that all of the major platforms for fantasy football have been able to go in and make this week's players like Derrick Henry, Big Ben, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner, all those guys are on bye weeks this week. So basically you treat this week like a bye week that you weren't necessarily expecting. So everyone had to know when you were playing fantasy football this year that this could be a possibility. And so you need to be somewhat expectant that this is going to happen. And so being able to be flexible, being able to move around. I know that a lot of commissioners have added extra bench spots to provide for this kind of a contingency. extra IR spots for guys with COVID. So this week is going to be a bye week for Pittsburgh and for Tennessee. I know a lot of people are not happy with that, but this isn't the first time something like this happened. I want to say it was 2017 when I want to say one of the hurricanes was coming up through Florida and it interrupted week 1 between Tampa Bay and Miami.
Right.
And what ended up happening is instead of what was it, I think they moved it back to like week 7 or week 11. Whenever both teams had the same bye week that year, they just bumped the game to that week and ended up week 1 was their bye week. So, which is brutal for an NFL schedule. But again, this is not changing bye weeks for a team is not unprecedented. It has happened due to weather conditions, not because of a pandemic. But I've seen a lot of complaints. So this just completely invalidates this season. People are going to get injured on weeks that were supposed to be their bye weeks. This isn't the first time this has happened, and people had to expect this. So I don't have a whole lot of sympathy, honestly, for fantasy football owners who are complaining about this. Again, this is also NFL players' livelihoods. So when it comes to people complaining about people getting injured or things getting moved around in terms of their fantasy football, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy. So that being said, there are some players available on waivers that can, in a sense, not necessarily completely make up for the players that you're missing with the Steelers and the Titans on basically a bye week this week. So there's a few players that are available. One, in terms of like wide receivers, if you have like a Corey Davis in your lineup, or maybe you have a Juju Smith-Schuster, one of the guys to look at is Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who plays in the Monday night game. Alan Lazard, this was a late addition to the injury list that I have that I'm going to be going through later. Alan Lazard was just added to the injury list, having gotten abdominal surgery today. He is now going to be out indefinitely with Devontae Adams. Still they're not completely sure if he's going to be able to go on Monday night. They think he is, but not completely sure. That still leaves Marquez Valdez-Scantling as the number, even if Adams doesn't play, as the number 2 option, if he does, against an Atlanta defense that gives up the second most amount of fantasy points to wide receivers. So leaving a lot of play out there for him as a late pickup if you need the help. There are a few running back options out there, but not anything that's really going to be super useful in terms of ownership. For the most part, in terms of running backs, we're already to the point in the season where if you haven't solidified your bench depth at running back, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to have a solid finishing off of the season. There's a couple guys that are available, like a Carlos Hyde who goes up against Miami. Jeff Wilson is only owned in 30% of leagues. He's going to be the number 2 in the San Francisco offense with Jerick McKinnon, going up against Philadelphia, who struggled a little bit. So there are options out there if you have a problem with guys that now have a bye week that you weren't expecting. So those are kind of the major fantasy ramifications for what's going on with the Pittsburgh and Tennessee game. Other players, now just going through the did not practice list today, there was a few surprise additions. Calvin Ridley apparently is dealing with an ankle, and when you have guys join the did not practice list late in the week, that's always concerning. They already have Julio Jones, who's kind of back and forth with his hamstring injury, so that's just something to watch. So I believe Russell Gage could be in for a big game this week if he's the only wide receiver available for the Monday Night Football game against Green Bay. Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver for the Washington football team, is also dealing with a little bit of an injury, did not practice today, so he's another guy that's a late addition. Deontay Johnson, we had him on the list because he's in the concussion protocol, but now he gets an extra week with the bye. John Brown has been dealing with a calf injury, but was able to practice limited today. DeAndre Hopkins was a late addition to the injury report today in terms of I want to say it was an ankle injury, and Odell Beckham Jr. also was limited today. So there's a lot of guys that were late additions to the injury report. Just it's something to watch. It's one thing if they were on the injury report starting Monday and they're just kind of managing reps. When they're late additions, that usually means that something tweaked in practice and could cause issues for your games this week. For right now, I think with like a DeAndre Hopkins, it's possible that they'll just hold him out the rest of practice for the rest of the week so that he can be ready for the game on Sunday. Same with Odell. John Brown, if he doesn't play, they still have enough weapons that their offense is going to be fine. John Brown's kind of been back and forth. I want to say so far he is right around that wide receiver 20 to 25. So he's kind of that high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2 right now. So there are options, kind of flex options that you can use to find there. So the two things since the game has already started, Philip Lindsay was questionable for tonight. He was actually inactive for the game, and Jamison Crowder, we'll see how he lasts tonight. Was not 100%, but wanted to play the game anyways, so we'll see what he can do. I actually do have him plugged into one roster simply because I have no other choice with guys that are already injured. So,
It's amazing. I give you a lot of credit, Ryan, because of the unprecedented season that you've had to deal with all these changes. It's one thing to have to go out there and make changes, but when you have a taxi squad tacking on 6 more on top of the original 10 with veterans, you wonder about the pool of players available for the all the way around, you know what I mean, in terms of trying to find depth to fill out rosters.
Yeah, you get to some points during the season, and it's gonna be a little bit different this year, obviously, with COVID and everything's going on with that, and already having to. Well, let's be honest. It's been a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people that this is the first game that's had to get rescheduled, and so you usually get to near the end of the year, and that's when everything really dries up in terms of the availability of players to fill in for injuries on your fantasy rosters. This is starting a little bit early this year, and I think one of the things that helps. I saw a report about the NFL so far this year. They have had a significant decline in the amount of especially holding penalties so far this year, which has helped to allow the amount of offensive scoring. Offensive scoring is up this year, I want to say an extra 12% over what it was last year, and last year was up 15% from the year before. This is one of the highest right now, highest scoring rates in the NFL since 2001. And so I think that part of what's going on is in order to make sure that the NFL keeps its fans, they're basically telling the referees, we'll hold off on some of the things. Let's make sure we get the offenses going. There's also, while there's been less holding penalties on the offense, especially on offensive line, there has been more pass interference and defensive holding penalties than there have been in the past. And yet at the same time, there's less total penalties. They're just, apparently with the way that they're calling them, it's part of what's provided for more offensive production this year in the NFL.
So my question to you is this: you talk about holding penalties. Do you think that the NFL is relaxing the rule a little bit, being a little bit more lenient because of the COVID situation, that they might be looking the other way? Or do you think they're just, because to me, let's face the reality, this is something different where, under other circumstances, they'd probably call games tight, but then it makes you wonder a little bit, we don't know about the transmission of this virus, sweat and so forth, but yet you still have to maintain the integrity of the game.
I think there's a lot of different, I think this is a multifaceted thing. I don't think it just has to do with COVID. I think that the NFL wants to make sure that they are keeping money coming in, that they are keeping fans interested and engaged with the offense. I think that there is a fear from some, while the NFL has shown more, and we're going to get into off the field issues here, but I think that because the NFL has seemed to show more interest in getting involved with the social justice issues and the Black Lives Matter issues and things like that, because the NFL seemed to show more interest in starting to support those kind of things going on, it has caused some backlash with some fans. And I think that in order to try to keep as much interest as possible across the board, well, let's make sure the offenses are going a little more.
Okay.
I think that could play into it a little bit. Whether it does or not, just call me a conspiracy theorist then. But overall, I think that for one, I think that they just want to get the offenses going because offense creates more fans than defense. So.
Okay, I've got a few questions, and then Xavier McKnight, I want you to incorporate a few things as well. First of all, Tennessee Titans, we know about the postponement, but Mike Vrabel seems to say that there's really nobody to blame. Do you agree with that assertion, that there's really nobody to blame?
In terms of their play, in terms of some of their players and their coaches getting infected with COVID? Yes and no. I think we all have to take personal responsibility for ourselves and for those around us. He may not know exactly how it got into, mixed in with the team and who got infected. And it could just be that he doesn't have anyone to blame. I think it was probably inevitable that this was going to happen to at least one team,
Right.
and may happen to a couple others. So whether there's someone to blame or not, I don't know. I think it was just inevitable that it was going to happen.
Okay, that's fair. So the NFL is threatening to strip draft choices if coaches don't follow mask protocols. I think if the fines don't work, let me tell you, the draft choices definitely will. When you start taking draft capital away from teams, owners get upset. Sometimes I tend to think the fine doesn't work, but taking draft choices away, you don't know if that's the difference between, winning a Super Bowl or not when you take away draft capital.
Yeah, draft capital is definitely for lack of a better term, an extreme punishment. And if that's what needs to happen in order for the coaches to, comply with the rules, then sometimes drastic measures are needed.
Xavier McKnight, what do you want to say about that?
Well, first of all, to everybody who has a problem with the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers not playing on Sunday, tough nuts. This is a real situation that we're dealing with here, this COVID-19 pandemic. Any and everybody has been affected by this in some form or fashion. Whether you or someone has been touched by the virus, it's impacted you in some sort of way. It's impacted your livelihood. It's impacted your job. It's impacted the way that you've been living, the way you've been able to get around. If you're used to traveling, you haven't been able to travel due to this pandemic. This was the right call by the NFL to make this call. And once again, to anybody that has an issue with that, tough nose. Now, to Ryan's point about Russell Gage possibly having a big game on Monday night, I'm sorry, I don't see it. Simply because Green Bay and their secondary, I believe, whether Calvin Ridley's able to play or not, I expect Atlanta's offense to be limited on Monday night. Because I like the Packers defense a little more than I like the Bears defense. I like the Packers defense a little more than I like the Bears defense. I definitely love the Packers defense a lot more than I love the Cowboys and the Seahawks defenses. And the Packers, they're a cohesive unit right now. They don't appear to be divided in any way whatsoever like they did last year. So that defense and that offense, they're coming together, they're gelling together. But me just looking at that Russell Gage point, I'm sorry, I just don't see it for this week. And as far as the players who are injured right now, some of the other players who are available, Valdez-Scantling would definitely be a nice find because here's the thing. The one cornerback that Atlanta had playing well for stretches during the game last Sunday against the Chicago Bears Darqueze Dennard is not going to be available for Monday night. He was the only guy that was giving Chicago's receivers any trouble whatsoever. So with that being said, he's going to have a chance to possibly go off for 150 to 200 receiving yards on Monday night. Just simply not to disrespect those Falcons cornerbacks or those Falcons secondary players, but they look very uninspired to play right now. And it's very clear that Dan Quinn is on his way out of the door. And just by judging the way that they're playing, he's lost the locker room. They don't necessarily care about playing for the coach anymore. And they're not playing inspiring football whatsoever. And you're coming off of 2 consecutive weeks where you go into the fourth quarter with 2 leads of at least 15 or more points, and you somehow end up losing the game.
Right.
That's not going to happen against the Green Bay Packers because Aaron Rodgers is on a mission. That defense is on a mission. They want to get back to the Super Bowl. They were 1 game short of going back last season. They want to get back to the Super Bowl. And right now, with all of the struggles that we see going on down in New Orleans with Michael Thomas being sidelined, they definitely would be considered the favorite in the NFC to many right now, even though I really like how the Bucs are looking as well. But the Packers would be the favorite right now. So I expect that defense to show up and to show out, and I don't expect any of Atlanta's receivers to have a good night. Not their receivers, not their tight ends. If anything, if the Packers defense is available for you out there, go grab that as opposed to trying to go grab Russell Gage. That's just how I feel about that.
All right, let me ask you this, Xavier, and I mentioned it to Ryan. I want your input on this as well. Fines don't work. Will draft choices be a deterrent for coaches to start wearing the mask and mask up, as you definitely go ahead and talk about in every single message that we're on every broadcast? Will that sink in?
Oh, it absolutely will. Because now you're not just talking about taking draft capital away, but Scott, you brought up a good point earlier when you said that the owners start to get mad and ticked off about these things. That means that if you don't go out here and follow the rules now and draft picks could be taken away from the teams, that means that your job is now potentially also on the line.
Right.
See, the reason these fines aren't working is because coaches, whether they're head coaches or they're assistant coaches, they make so much more money now than they did over a decade ago. So that's why the fines aren't necessarily working. These guys they're not penny pinching necessarily anymore as coordinators or as coaches or as even regular assistant coaches. No, they're getting paid pretty well by these organizations. No matter how the organizations are doing from a winning and losing standpoint, most of these coaches they're making a pretty nice hefty check. And I'm pretty sure they would love to continue to make that nice hefty check. So they're going to fall in line and they're going to do what they need to do. And they're going to put their mask on or they're going to put their face shield on or whatever it is that you're using to cover your face. And you're going to keep it there until it's time for the game to end. That's going to be the point blank period thing on that. Because once again, you don't want to lose draft picks because draft picks can come in, they help your team out immediately, or they're definitely there for the future. But the owners, you talk about them now getting involved in this? No, this is absolutely going to send a message through league-wide, and I don't expect to see any more coaches with a face mask down. And if we do, I expect to hear that there was a reprimanding from the organization, if not a termination.
Well, again, we talk about draft choices. One guy that's been who has been part of the problem is John Gruden. Let's talk about the Raiders for a moment. They're investigating that after players were seen without masks at an indoor charity event. John Gruden's had COVID. Sean Payton's had it. So let's talk about the Raiders making a bad impression in their new hometown, not wearing the mask. And of all places, Las Vegas? Seriously?
Well, once again, and I don't want to go as far as accusing people of wanting to do things like this, but you just can't afford to be irresponsible during this time that we're going through with this pandemic. These are very irresponsible things that these players and coaches with the Raiders organization is doing, and it is a distraction as opposed to some of the play that we've seen on the field from them in some of the first few weeks of the season too. They didn't look too hot against the New England Patriots, but you can't take away what you saw in week 1 and also in week 2 on Monday Night Football against the New Orleans Saints. But right now, all of that is a deterrent because of this entire COVID situation. Now, Derek Carr came out and he had some things to say about this, and that was a nice leadership standpoint from Derek Carr to come out and say the things that he said about it. But in this case, actions will speak a lot louder than words. I don't really care what they're saying about this situation right now. Do better by showing us your actions. Wear your face mask, wear your shields, do everything you need to do during this time. Because honestly, hearing that they were at an event and there were a few of them who were not wearing masks, I'm gonna knock on wood here and hope that this doesn't happen. What I'm about to say, it's not gonna surprise me if we hear something within the upcoming week or two that there is a COVID outbreak in the Las Vegas Raiders
Right.
next. It's not gonna surprise me at all. But I hope it doesn't happen, of course.
Well, everybody got on my Miami Marlins, and I'm going to say my Miami Marlins, okay, when there was a problem out in Atlanta, and they've gone through 61 players, okay, and they had 174 roster moves, and yet they still made it into playoffs, and the old St. Louis Cardinals were culprits, and nobody was learning until MLB tightened up the protocols there. Meanwhile, when I say this is we're talking about the Marlins, okay, having gone through 61 players being utilized. The average NFL team per se, when you count the practice squad, you're probably looking 75, 80 strong when you consider the 16 plus the 53, 54, and a lot more players out here. When you put all of this in perspective, Ryan Skolrud, okay, and you realize that this could get ugly with the NFL very, very quickly since there's a lot more players, 32 teams. This could get, I mean, what we're seeing now, obviously, isn't an I told you so moment yet. But I'll tell you what, I don't like the rumblings, especially after the positive start that we've had with a lot of the good results that we had prior. Ryan, what are your thoughts about all of this?
Yeah, honestly, it again. I like I said earlier, it comes down to personal responsibility. You guys need to take this seriously. Even if you are, even if you have objections to certain things about this, just take care of yourself and take care of those around you. I don't like wearing a mask, but I do it anyways. I hope that it doesn't snowball and that it doesn't get worse, and that we have to, that we have to cancel more games in the NFL. I appreciate what the NHL and what the NBA were able to do,
right,
with setting up the bubbles, that were able to keep guys safe, and keep everyone involved with those playoff situations safe. Honestly, with the NFL, it's very, very hard to do a bubble, just because of the amount of players, the amount of coaching staffs. You could set up somewhat regional bubbles, but you'd have to set up multiples. It's not like you could just do like one down in Orlando like you did with the NBA and have two in the NHL. You would need four or five at least, for the NFL. And so honestly, I think if people are just vigilant and be smart, do what they need to do to stay safe and to, wash your hands, wear the mask, don't go out into public if you don't need to. These guys have the money and the ability to take care of those things and have those things taken care of for them so that they can keep themselves semi-quarantined. And so, like I said, I hope it doesn't snowball. I'll do what I can to help people with their fantasy rosters if that does happen. But I'm hoping just overall for the league, for the NFL, for the country in general, that it doesn't happen.
All right, so let me go over some other interesting points that I've come up with, okay? We'll go back to tonight's football game. Should Adam Gase's job be on the line in tonight's game? And I'm only talking about the fact that this guy here has had more lives and more, so it seems. The situation in Miami didn't really work out for him. They ran him out of town. And, again, there's a team that started, 1-7 last year, finished strong at 6-2, and now they find themselves in a precarious 0-3 spot in what we call the a game that shouldn't even be on. Go ahead, Xavier.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam Gase's job should be on the line tonight. And it's not even just the fact that the Jets are staring 0-4 in the face here, and it's not the fact that they have had absolutely abysmal play. It's the fact that he can't galvanize that locker room.
Right.
There are more and more stars with whoever the stars are left on the Jets at this point, because we know that they don't keep good players on that team. But the more stars that they still have on that team, and guys who were there last season and are no longer there, for example, Jamal Adams, who have continually came out and said things like, he doesn't galvanize the locker room. He doesn't bring people together. He doesn't really sit down and speak with us as a unit. Yes, because you can't have a head coach who cannot be a total leader of men. Let's get one thing straight when it comes down to Adam Gase. Two people are the reason that he became a head coach in the NFL in the first place. Peyton Manning and what they did in Denver, and how he looked like he was miraculously turning Jay Cutler's career around the one season that he was the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, and Jay Cutler actually ended up having a good season, which is not something we can say too much about him and his NFL career. Those are the two reasons that he ended up becoming a head coach in the NFL in the first place. Now, I'll give you another example why his job should be on the line. A lot of us thought that Ryan Tannehill was going to go back to being a somewhat pedestrian quarterback when this season went underway, because we thought defenses will have more tape on him and he'll go back to looking like the Ryan Tannehill that played with the Miami Dolphins. That hasn't been the case at all. Ryan Tannehill has been a borderline MVP candidate in my eyes, if I must say so myself. So clearly Adam Gase was the problem. He was the problem in Miami. He's the problem in New York. And when the Jets let him go, he doesn't need to have another head coaching job in the league again. If he's going to be an offensive coordinator, that's fine, because we understand what he can do for an offense. But leading a group as a whole, no thank you. His job should absolutely be on the line tonight.
Ryan, what are your thoughts about that?
I actually laughed the day that the Jets hired Adam Gase, thinking, oh, they did a Jets thing. I mean, I in no way thought that Adam Gase should be a head coach. I think that he is a good offensive coordinator. Although, and you can say what you want about what he did with the Broncos and with Peyton Manning. In my opinion, a lot of that was Peyton Manning. And I think that he was able to ride the coattails of that a little bit.
Right.
And like you said, Xavier, the year that he had where he was able to help Jay Cutler have a semi-decent season, that helped. But overall, I think that he is a much better offensive coordinator. He's a better play strategizer, I believe, than he is a head coach. Because it's one thing to be able to have the strategy and have the playbook. It's another thing to be able to get your guys to figure out how to execute it and how to lead them and how to show them, how to work together. Because it doesn't matter how good your playbook is if your guys aren't going to play together and aren't going to work together, and if you can't lead them, the playbook doesn't matter. And so whether it's on the line tonight or not, I don't think he should be a head coach at all anywhere. So, I mean, I'm with you, Xavier. It should be on the line tonight. We'll see. If he does get fired after tonight's game, we'll see what happens with Le'Veon Bell once he comes back from IR and how his reps are managed. Because I know that was one big contentious part of what's gone on so far this year, is that Le'Veon Bell was already dealing with an injured hamstring, and Gase put him back in the game and made it even worse.
Yeah, he mishandled the situation, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I don't think that Gase is a very good people manager overall. He's a play caller. He's not a people manager. So if he can find an offensive coordinator position somewhere, I can support that, as long as he's not the one calling the shots over an overall team.
All right, so before this game ends tonight, why don't both of you guys give a prediction on this thing anyways, so we can have our laugh of the week. Ryan, go ahead and lead off. Who do you think is going to win the Adam Gase Super Bowl?
Well, I think that it's just so that everyone knows right now with 20 seconds left, or a minute 20 in the first quarter, it's 7-3 Jets over the Broncos. I think the thing that helps the Jets is the fact that Brett Rippon is the quarterback for the Broncos tonight because you've got Drew Lock injured and Jeff Driscoll is just plain bad. So not that I have anything bad against Brett Rippon. I just don't – he hasn't had enough reps.
Right.
He's basically been the third string guy for a while now. So in that – I think the Jets probably pull this one out. In a horrible game, I think they have enough of their quote unquote starters to play to keep them going for tonight over the Broncos. I mean, both of them are terrible, but yeah, I think the Jets probably pull this one out.
Do you want to give a score, even though we know they won't get shut out like the Cincinnati Reds?
I'll probably go, and this one I'll go 7. I'll go 20-17 Jets.
Okay, Xavier, you're on the hook for this next one.
I'm going to go 20-17 Denver. I don't care if Brett Rippon's the quarterback. He has better weapons to throw the football to. That's one thing that we have to point out here. He also has 2 really good running backs there in the backfield tonight. Tonight could be one of those nights where we finally see a vintage Melvin Gordon showing. And just simply because I don't believe Adam Gase has the support of the locker room. I don't believe the players care about going out there and playing hard right now. And Sam Darnold is doing everything possible to continue to show people that he's not the problem there. He is not a bust. So I expect Sam Darnold to have a respectable game tonight against a depleted Denver Broncos defense with Von Miller being out for the season. And you can tell that injury has really affected that defense as a whole. Not just because of the production that he brings, but probably because of the leadership that he brings to that unit and to that locker room as a whole anyway. But with that being said, they will somehow find a way to have enough success tonight to be able to contain the Jets, despite the fact that the Jets are winning this game right now. I'm gonna pick Denver to win this game, and they will win their first game of the season, and the Jets will fall to a miserable 0-4. And we will see what happens with Adam Gase.
Yeah,
just a quick update. Sorry, just to quick interrupt.
Sure.
Sam Darnold was sacked about a minute ago, and Joe Flacco is now in at quarterback for the Jets.
Really? Oh, that's an interesting.
So I may switch. Denver may actually win this game.
Well, all right, that's okay. Hey, you're the only one looking at the monitor, not us, but that's okay.
Well, really
I'm going to go 21.
Scott, really quickly, let me just ask Ryan this really quickly.
Sure.
Because of that sack, was he injured or did they just bench him?
I don't know. All it said is that Sam Darnold was sacked, and then like a play later it says Joe Flacco in at quarterback.
Okay.
So
well, I'm going to go.
I'm digging it. Okay. The tweet next to it says Sam Darnold just got absolutely destroyed on a sack. Protection wasn't the problem there. He needed to get rid of it. So apparently he held the ball a little too long. And so now it is Joe Flacco versus Brett Rippon in this game.
Who would have thunk that? All right, I'll slip in my score for whatever it's worth. Denver 21-17. We're done with this football game. I'm going to bring out a couple of other things which I think are interesting. According to Gil Brandt, since 1978, 193 teams have started an NFL season 0-3, and not including the 6 this year, and only 5 have made the playoffs. Let me give you the teams for which did make the playoffs. 1981, the Jets are 10-5-1. 1992, the Chargers are 11-5. 1995, the Detroit Lions 10-6, and I actually covered that team, the Lions, and they strung off 8 in a row until they got blown out by Philly. And then 1998, the Buffalo Bills 10-6, and 2018, the Texans 11-5. I should point out that even though there's 6 teams that are 0-3 going into this week, the Cincinnati Bengals don't look bad at 0-2-1, and I love the upside with Joe Burrow. So with that said, guys, okay, let's talk about that stat. 6 teams, and I don't like those odds for any of these teams getting in the playoffs at all.
No, I mean, I'm looking at the teams. You got the Broncos at 0-3. They're not going to come. I mean, with how they're playing, they're not going to come, and the injuries, they're not going to come anywhere close to the Chiefs or the Raiders. You've got the Bengals at 0-2-1 with the Steelers playing very good. They have a very solid defense, and as long as Big Ben stays upright and doesn't get injured, they're going to have solid play from the quarterback position and be able to use, Connor and all those weapons on the offense. So I don't see the Bengals coming up behind the Ravens or Steelers, and the fact the Browns are 2-1, I don't really care. The Texans at 0-3. I would usually say, it's possible that they could turn it around, but it's not possible this year. I don't think they can turn this around. The Colts are playing very, very well. I saw a stat that Phillip Rivers, so far this year through 3 games, has been pressured 17 times. Last year, he was averaged 14 pressures per game.
Wow.
They're doing a good job of protecting Phillip Rivers, and they have a solid run game in Jonathan Taylor, and they have Naheem Hines who can catch the ball out of the backfield, play that that Danny Woodhead, Austin Eckler role. He has all the tools he needs, so it doesn't have to be on his shoulders to win a game with an offensive line that can actually protect him. And the Titans, even when they haven't been playing well, Ryan Tannehill is still throwing for 300 yards in a game. And so that's the AFC. Pulling up the NFC, you've got the 0-3 Giants. They're not gonna come anywhere close. The Eagles could. I mean, considering that entire division is 2-9-1. It's possible that the Eagles at 0-2-1 could come back and pass up the Cowboys and Washington, but I still think the Cowboys are more likely to take this division just with how explosive their offense is. And then you've got the Vikings at 0-3, which is the big surprise to me.
Right.
Well,
getting rid of Stephon Diggs didn't help their cause any either.
No, Justin Jefferson was a surprise this last week. It'll be interesting to see if he can keep that up. And then the Falcons at 0-3. I mean, the Falcons at 0-3. They're done. They're done. I mean, they may make a late charge like they did last year to get close to 500, but they're not making the playoffs.
Well, all of what we said, I still love the upside of Joe Burrow. I really do. I think he's going to be a fine quarterback. So let's go ahead. And I had to eat a little bit of humble pie the other day on yesterday's edition of the Sports Exchange with Steve Ballesteri, when I thought the Lions were going to get blown out and give up 48, 50 points last week against the Cardinals. And boy, they walked in there and pulled out a 26-23 win in Arizona. What are your thoughts about that? The Lions win out in the desert. That, to me, I didn't see that one coming. I don't think a lot of people saw that one coming.
Definitely a surprise to me. I think that just with how their defense had played, their defense has been giving up so much this year. In terms of just in fantasy points, which usually, refers to just how bad they have been in stopping anything. The Detroit Lions have given up the 7th most amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks, 6th most to running backs, and 9th most to wide receivers. So they've been getting blown up. Their defense has been getting blown up all year. And just the fact that they were able to get something going this year, or this last week, keeping Hopkins out of the end zone was huge.
Right.
And then getting just enough pressure on Kyler Murray to force 3 interceptions. I mean, anytime you get 3 interceptions in a game, you're going to have a very good chance to win, because that means that you're keeping them out of the end zone, especially a high-powered offense, a potentially high-powered offense like the Cardinals. If you can take the ball away from them and get Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins off the field, you're really helping your cause.
Well, it doesn't hurt the fact that Adrian Peterson's looking pretty good with Darrell Bevel either. The Lions have been able to find a running attack, but either Adrian Peterson's finding the fountain of youth, or it doesn't hurt to have Bevel there right with him to try to give him some sort of a running game. And then, of course, put Kenny Golladay in there. And I've always loved Matt Stafford. I don't care what the critics say about Stafford. To me, Matt Stafford is a good – I have zero problem with him. The best quarterback that the Lions have had since Bobby Lane. I know you guys weren't even born. Heck, I wasn't even born when Bobby Lane was doing heroics there. But so, all right, so let me ask you a question. Today is October 1st, 2020. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I got to make sure I understand what my dates are here. So I believe Halloween is October 31st for as long as I've known it, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
So it seems like to me DK Metcalf must have been must have had Leon Lett's costume last weekend when he decided to not quite run it into the end zone and made a play that only Leon Lett could have made. My goodness, where did that costume come from? DK Metcalf and Ryan Skolrud's neck of the woods. Holy moly!
I cannot tell you. I had 5 different DFS lineups, daily fantasy lineups, that had a Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf stack that lost 11 points on each one of those, and most of them would have finished in the money and didn't because of that fumble. It's one of those things where it won't happen again. DK Metcalf won't let that happen again. He's not going to just, slow down, just kind of lackadaisically hold it in his hand as I walk in the end zone. I mean, I'm guessing he thought that Diggs fell and didn't keep his balance, which is why he just kind of tried to take a couple of walking steps into the end zone. But yeah, it's not going to happen again. So,
well, luckily he redeemed himself at the very end. He got a touchdown anyways, but still, I guess if you're looking for America's funniest videos, DK Metcalf may have gone out there and nominated himself for it. So let's go over a few games from last week, and then we'll talk about 5 games I have in mind this week. All right, fellas? We talked about the Lions and the Cardinals. The Green Bay Packers and New Orleans Saints was a shootout in the Superdome. So, Xavier McKnight, what are your thoughts about that? And then, Ryan, you can follow up about the Packers going to the Superdome.
Well, first, my thoughts on the Packers and the Saints game. The Packers are flying high. They look like the favorites in the NFC. And New Orleans, they're missing Michael Thomas right now, as we know. But the Saints have a huge problem, Scott and Ryan. And I have been explaining this to people. And I think they're finally now seeing this for what it really is now. Drew Brees is not the guy that can carry a franchise anymore. He is still a good quarterback, but he's a great game manager now at best. You see, he won't even attempt to throw the ball down the field anymore. There's a reason for that. And I started to notice this slow decline of Drew Brees on one night in particular. The Thursday night football game against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas in 2018. The Cowboys' defensive front roughed Drew Brees up that night. But they also started the quick process to father time creeping up on Drew Brees. That game in particular, he hasn't been the same quarterback to me since that game ended. And I feel like had it not been for the thumb injury that he suffered early in the season last year, people would have saw it then. The thumb injury actually saved him enough time because it allowed him to actually allow his body to get some rest. But by the time the regular season was coming to an end and the postseason was here, you started to see certain things with his game again. So this is why I picked the Bucs to win the division, just simply because you look at how Brady looks right now. The offensive line is continuing to look better. He has a house full of weapons. Drew Brees honestly has only 2 weapons that he can trust. That's Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. One of those 2 is injured right now. Tom Brady has Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, even though he's injured right now, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate, Rob Gronkowski, even though Gronk does definitely look older right now, he still has more weapons to work with. And his defense is playing a lot better than New Orleans' defense is playing right now, too. Some of those guys on that defense, they look old right now. Cameron Jordan isn't getting to the quarterback the way that we're used to him getting to the quarterback. Malcolm Jenkins is getting beat on coverages that we're not used to seeing Malcolm Jenkins get beat out on. So, a big up to the Packers, and especially, and that's what really stinks about Lazard being out right now. He had a great game on Sunday Night Football, and for him to now be out of this game on Monday night, it absolutely stinks right now. But Aaron Rodgers is indeed that bad man that he is, and he's playing like a league MVP candidate right now. And all of that talk for the past 2 years of Aaron Rodgers is getting washed up or he's on the decline, that's over now because it never existed in the first place.
Right.
He was limiting how he was playing just simply because he didn't want to turn the ball over. His QBR and his efficiency, those are 2 of the biggest stats that he has that are going for him right now to end up being the greatest quarterback of all time in those particular scenarios and in those particular categories. But now we're back to the point of the organization traded up to draft Jordan Love, even though he doesn't look very good right now from what all the reports are indicating. So he's motivated, he's fired up, and he wants to go out there and play. And he wants to get out of Brett Favre's shadow to some degree as well. They don't really talk about this as much anymore because Aaron and Brett have a better relationship now than they did a decade ago.
Right.
But Aaron Rodgers winning a second Super Bowl, that would put him in a slightly better category and better standings with Green Bay fans probably than Brett Favre. Brett Favre went to 2 Super Bowls, but he only won 1. And if Aaron Rodgers can get that second Super Bowl, I mean, he's right up there with Bart Starr, who is one of those quarterbacks that for some reason people don't talk about, the late, great Bart Starr. But there are a lot of motivating factors here to why Aaron Rodgers is playing the way that he did. And also, it's year 2 in the offense with his coach.
Right.
It makes a difference that that second year is here now, and you're not just coming into the first year and you're still trying to figure things out, learn things out on the fly. I think a lot of people forget when it comes to Matt LaFleur, he is a protege of Kyle Shanahan. He was in Atlanta with Kyle Shanahan as Matt Ryan's quarterback coach. Kyle Shanahan first went to Atlanta in 2015. Matt Ryan struggled in 2015 in that offense. What did he do the very next year? He went and won the NFL's Most Valuable Player Award, and the Falcons went to the Super Bowl, and we'll just leave that at that because we know what happened in that game. But the point is year 2 in that offense. So things are definitely going to look better. They're going to gel better. Aaron's going to feel better and more comfortable in other types of situations. But kudos to the Packers in the season they're having. And as far as the New Orleans Saints fans go, listen, it's still a lot of football left to play. You're 1-2 on the season. And the good news for you is the Falcons absolutely stink, and Carolina is rebuilding. And Tampa, even though they're 2-1 right now and they look very impressive, this is still a new group. And they're coming off of wins over the rebuilding Panthers and the struggling Denver Broncos right now. I want to see how Tampa's going to look once they play against one of those upper echelon level teams again. And that will tell me where I need to go with them, even though I'm still going with them to win the division. And New Orleans will be a wild card, in my opinion.
Well, I'll say this. The Green Bay Packers, to me, I don't care who you have as a backup quarterback. You need a good backup quarterback. We've seen that when Aaron Rodgers has been hurt, who you're going to fall, and then their season falls apart. So I don't care whether you draft a wide receiver or you don't. People have to understand, especially when I was growing up, they had 12 to 18 rounds in the draft. Now you have 6 or 7 rounds of undrafted free agents. You can find good players anywhere. So anybody that in Packerland that's whining about not drafting a guy, get over it. Relax, would you? Okay, you can find players everywhere. So I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. Aaron Rodgers, and you're right, Xavier, okay, second year of Matt LaFleur's offense. But let's not kid ourselves. The national television audience was not disappointed that you had a good shootout between Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers. It was a good, entertaining football game. It really was. And it kept people glued in. Ryan, some thoughts about that? I want to get to a few other games, and we'll predict a couple other games before we wrap up the broadcast. So let's go ahead, Ryan. Talk about the Packers and the Saints.
Yeah, the Packers look really good. And for me, in terms of Aaron Rodgers, I'm always looking at this from the fantasy aspect of it, not necessarily the, does he have enough left? Does he throw it downfield? So starting with Aaron Rodgers, again, this is like you said, Xavier, this is his second year in this offense. Last year, it was a completely different offense than what he has run in years past. There was some conflict between him and LaFleur and trying to figure out how they wanted to run the offense and how they wanted to work. There needed to be some chemistry building between the two of them. They have worked on that, and I think that having that full year through it, it's showing that it is working now this year, that their offense is putting up big numbers, both in the passing game and in the run game. And so the Packers offense is another one of those. While they may not be putting up, the numbers that say, the Seahawks or the Cowboys are in terms of some of their, they are in terms of their scoring. All three of those teams are just blowing defenses apart right now. But the the Packers are a very good team, and they're going to continue to be competitive. And whether or not Aaron Rodgers is throwing for 4 touchdowns, or he's throwing for 1 touchdown and handing it off 30 times, or doing little dink and dunk passes to Aaron Jones, doesn't matter. He still has a cannon of an arm. He has not lost that. And so it doesn't really matter what's going on, in my opinion, with the rest of the team. He is still going to help lead that team, and is still can put up those big numbers if he needs to. As far as Drew Brees goes, yeah, he does not have the arm strength. He never really was one of those guys that was a big arm strength guy. Peyton Manning was the same way. Peyton Manning was never known for his arm strength. He was known for his football IQ and for his accuracy,
Right.
not for a big arm. That was one of the knocks on him, coming out of the draft, was, does he have a big enough arm to get it done? And as we saw, it didn't matter. And so that was kind of been what Drew Brees is. Drew Brees had a big enough arm to make the deep throws. And now it's, the reason that Michael Thomas is, so big, and especially in terms of fantasy production, is because he runs those short routes. Why Alvin Kamara is so big in fantasy, because Drew Brees can dump it off to him. He can target him 14 times in a game, dumping it off in little dump offs and screen passes. So
Right, yards after the catch.
yeah. So in terms of New Orleans, yeah, I think that this is Tampa Bay's division this year.
Yeah, and if you want a big arm, you got Jameis Winston at some point down the road if he ever takes over. So, but yeah, you guys are right. So I know that they had the Chick-fil-A Bowl out in Atlanta, but the one bowl game that occurred on Sunday was called the Inevitable Bowl, and that was the fact that it looks like Nick Foles finally took over for Mitch Trubisky. So I don't think any of us knew that this was a surprise. It wouldn't have mattered if it was a matter of when, wouldn't it, Ryan?
Yeah, I really think this was a matter of when, not if. They didn't bring in Nick Foles and pay a little bit of that massive salary of his from the Jaguars and trade for him just to let him sit the bench. I think that the coaching staff knew that it was bound to happen. And again, one of the knocks on Mitchell Trubisky wasn't ever really his arm, or his physical attributes, or his ability to run out of the pocket. For him, it was always his decision-making. That was the thing. And his decision-making was enough to keep him from being the starter his junior year. He only started his senior year at North Carolina. And he is one of those guys that will always go down as the head scratcher when the Bears drafted him, because of his decision-making abilities. Again, he had the physical tools, but it was always been his decision-making abilities that have been suspect. And we have seen that, especially these last 2 years. And so it was inevitable that Foles was going to take over. And honestly, with Foles taking over, that I think that's a big boost to Allen Robinson. It's a big boost to Jimmy Graham. And I think it's a big boost to the running game, to David Montgomery, simply because they now will have a passing game to take the pressure off of the offensive line for run blocking for David Montgomery. So,
well, if a familiar factor with Matt Nagy didn't hurt matters any, Matt Nagy knew what he was talking about. Go over a few more games here. I know that we'll get into a couple of games tonight, then we'll be able to wrap it up. So, Xavier, some thoughts about what transpired in Atlanta with the Bears?
Well, I'm not surprised that Nick Foles is now the starting quarterback. I actually predicted that he would be the starting quarterback by week 3. However, I thought that would be because the Chicago Bears would be on the verge of being 0-3. It should be noted that Chicago Bears are 3-0, and they still made this quarterback change because Mitch Trubisky Sunday against Atlanta's defense, which we know is not very good, he looked absolutely awful. And to one thing that Ryan said, what we knew about Mitch Trubisky is he had all the physical attributes from an athletic standpoint.
Right.
His arm isn't very good. That's one thing we can go ahead and just point out right now. I mean, he throws a lot of flutter balls, to say the least. I mean, some of the throws that he makes, I'm just like, really? Like, this, they pick you over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Like, but yes, it was inevitable that this was going to happen. And as far as the game itself goes, because Scott, I know you're waiting for my thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm.
I had arrived at work midway between the third quarter, and one of my coworkers, he's like, "How about those Falcons today?" And I looked at him and I said, "I'm not holding my breath on this lead right now."
I've heard that too.
Simply because of what happened last week, and also because of what happened in Super Bowl 51.
Right.
I have not trusted that team for a very long time, and it actually goes back beyond Super Bowl 51. For me, it goes back as far as the NFC Championship game in 2012 against the San Francisco 49ers. That is how far back it goes for me.
Yeah, I really feel bad for you if you're a Detroit Lion person. Sorry you're not getting any sympathy from me, but go ahead.
But this was a good move by the Chicago Bears. And once again, the other big thing I predicted for the Bears that would happen for them this year is that Khalil Mack would get back to playing in Defensive Player of the Year form. And he looks absolutely phenomenal right now. So we'll see how the Bears season continues to play out. We'll see if Nick Foles and his familiarity with Matt Nagy can lead him more towards a run that what he had with the Philadelphia Eagles in the 2 times that he was there, as opposed to when he went to other places and didn't necessarily have a great deal of success.
Okay, let's go over a few other games briefly, and then we'll talk about this week, and then we'll start with the Tennessee Titans, Minnesota Vikings. We knew Tennessee would be good, but I don't think anybody expected Minnesota to be 0-3 at this particular point. And now Tennessee has bigger problems than one anticipated, as we alluded to earlier in the broadcast. So who wants to take the lead on this one?
I'll take the lead on this one simply by saying the Minnesota Vikings offense looks pedestrian right now. The best thing they have going for them is Dalvin Cook. Kirk Cousins is back to being exactly what we knew and we thought he was anyway. He is not a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. I don't know why people were falling under this impression. Adam Thielen without Stephon Diggs there, he's getting exposed right now.
Right.
Let's just call it like it is. But the big surprising thing for me when it comes to Minnesota is that their defense is not playing well right now.
Right.
That was the strong point of why I picked this team to win this division in my rankings before this season even started. Because you talk about adding a piece like Yannick Ngakoue to that defense. Now, it does not help that, and excuse me, I can't remember the defensive lineman's name right now, but he's out for the first few weeks of the season, if not the entire season. Daniil Hunter, that's his name. It doesn't help that he's not playing right now, but they still have so many other really good players on that defense. Harrison Smith, the safety, Anthony Barr at linebacker. They have some other good players in that secondary, and you talk about adding a piece like Yannick Ngakoue to that defensive line, and I thought, oh, that's absolutely it right there. They're going to go back to being an absolute dominant defense again, and they haven't looked very dominant at all. So that's very concerning for me, especially when you have a head coach who is a great defensive play caller like Mike Zimmer.
Anything you want to add, Ryan?
Yeah, one thing about the Vikings to add into their, their starting 3 or their top 3 cornerbacks, I want to say, from last year their top 3 are gone either by trade or by injury, which has really been the big thing that's hurt them. And usually when you like you were saying, adding Ngakoue to that defense, having a solid defensive line can usually help cover up for a defensive secondary that may not be as good because they can get to the quarterback quickly. The same thing with a very good defensive backs. They're going to get exposed if you don't have a good, solid defensive line also. So it's I think that the deficiencies for them is I don't think that the defensive line is quite gelled yet with some of the new additions. And they are struggling at defensive back in Minnesota because they just don't have enough healthy players in terms of the defensive back, especially at corner, which has been where they've been exposed the most. So as far as the Tennessee Titans go, it's been interesting that Derrick Henry is kind of back to where I kind of expected him to be a couple years ago in terms of not the huge games, but the reason he is getting so many yards is because of the volume and how many actual rushes he's getting. I was not expecting like the series of 4 games in a row at the end of a couple seasons ago where has multiple runs for 20 plus yards, because it's not like he's a speed demon. He's a truck. He's a semi truck.
Right.
That's very hard to bring down. And so, just seeing that, the volume that he is getting and the efficiency of Ryan Tannehill, it's amazing what a quarterback can do when you have an offensive line that can protect you. So yes, those are my thoughts on that game.
All right. So the Las Vegas Raiders went to New England as expected, guys.
Yeah.
What about you, Xavier? Quick thoughts?
I'm actually going to say no. I was actually very surprised that the Raiders came out and looked as pedestrian as they did.
Okay.
I was one of those that after the Monday night game, I said, maybe we didn't buy enough into the Las Vegas Raiders. Derek Carr looked very impressive in that Monday night game. He looked very pedestrian on Sunday against Bill Belichick's defense. And I got to give Bill Belichick and that entire organization some credit right now, because with all of the players they lost on that defense in the offseason, and with all of the other players that they had opt out due to COVID-19 concerns, they look great right now. And, of course, I expected Cam Newton to come in and have the type of season that he's having right now. But N'Keal Harry, he's finally healthy, and he's showing you why he was a first-round pick right now. When it comes to the Patriots, I'm just now asking myself, okay, when is the day that I'm going to turn on my phone and I'm going to see a push notification saying that the New England Patriots have traded for Odell Beckham Jr.? That's the only thing I'm waiting for now when it comes to that team. They are a lot better than I thought they would be, because, Scott, remember in my preseason predictions, I said 6-10 at best, just simply because I saw the depletion of talent there. But this just goes on to show just a credit to how great of a coach Bill Belichick is. And when you have a great culture like what the Patriots have built as well, some amazing things that can happen. And it also doesn't help that the AFC East is still a very rebuilding team, rebuilding division nonetheless. The Buffalo Bills, they still should be the favorites to win that division.
Right.
But we saw on last Sunday that they still have some problems there as well, even though they took on a team that I feel is very underrated, that being the Los Angeles Rams.
Right.
And they still came back and won that game, but they were up by 28-3 at one point in that game. The Rams had came back and taken a 32-28 lead, and the Bills went on to win that game 35-32 in that game. So they should still be viewed as the favorites because of what they have on defense. Josh Allen looks absolutely phenomenal right now. But the Patriots, I definitely believe they're going to get one of those AFC wild card spots.
Yeah.
My apologies for that. I'm still thinking
That's all right.
of all the sports we have going on right now with baseball.
Oh, we all are. Yeah, I mean, I figured 9-7, 10-6, not going to gloat around there. But, Cam Newton got a fresh start, looking good, but we still have a long ways to go, providing COVID-19 doesn't disrupt too many things. A few more games in the past. We'll go over a few games here this week. Okay, Houston Texans lost to Pittsburgh. You have the threes backwards. So, Houston's 0-3. Pittsburgh is 3-0. Ben Roethlisberger against Deshaun Watson. One has a much better supporting cast than the other. One can thank the coach and general manager for the reason why they're 0-3. Bill O'Brien, who I'm speaking to, Ben Roethlisberger is back. It's going to be a long year for Houston. And I'm really, and I think Bill O'Brien's seat's going to get hotter if this team regresses really, really, really bad with the puzzling move that we've talked about time and time again while they let DeAndre Hopkins go. So, all I can tell you is Houston's in trouble if they continue this downward spiral, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are a feel-good story. Both of you go ahead and take the lead on whoever wants to, and then after this, I got 2 more games of last week. Then we'll get to some of the key games this week, all right?
Ryan, let me actually start off on this one because I have a point that I want to make about the Houston Texans right now, which is very concerning. It's not necessarily what they're doing offensively. I expected their offense to struggle without DeAndre Hopkins there. I like Will Fuller. He's a nice wide receiver. He's not a number one. I feel the way about Will Fuller that I feel about Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster had a phenomenal season 2 years ago for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who did he have playing on the other side of him? That bad man on the field, that I should say. Let me preface it like that because we know we know some of his off the field issues as well. Antonio Brown. And when you have a wide receiver that is that great and is that dynamic, it's going to open up the field for others. When you take Antonio Brown out of that offense and now Juju Smith-Schuster is the man, it's a different type of ballgame. And that's the way I feel about Will Fuller right now. He was, for the time that he was healthy, he was out there putting up great numbers for the Texans. But he also had DeAndre Hopkins on the other side of him. And we know who the better wide receiver of those two is. Just look at what's going on in Arizona right now with the season that DeAndre Hopkins is having. But the defense is struggling. They can't create turnovers, and that's a concern. That is a huge problem.
Okay, Ryan.
I agree with you. The Houston Texans defense is terrible. They can't get to the quarterback. They're having problems creating turnovers. And I'm with you with the Will Fuller. I knew that Will Fuller was going to struggle without DeAndre Hopkins, without another big body there to take coverage away. And that was if Will Fuller could stay healthy, which he can't. He was added to the injury list today and is questionable for Sunday. So already they're down to Randall Cobb and Kenny Stills. So after last year of having the duo of DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller as their starting two wide receivers, they are now down to probably Randall Cobb and Kenny Stills and Brandon Cooks as their three wide receivers, which is not promising. But for me, I do have to say I've been very happy with how David Johnson has performed this year. It hasn't been great. He doesn't have the best offensive line to work with, but again, it's been very good to see that he is still being productive with the touches that he gets. Already has a couple touchdowns on the year. I think that they would be better off, and I think it would help out Deshaun Watson as well to get David Johnson more involved in the passing game. But that's never been a Bill O'Brien offense to involve the running backs in the passing game. So that's just my 2 cents on them. And then with the Steelers are, again, they have a very solid defense, a very good defensive backfield. They've got guys that can get to the quarterback. And then with the offense, James Conner is healthy and playing well. And again, as long as Ben Roethlisberger can stay upright, as long as that offense can keep him from getting hit too much, he is going to produce and provide plenty of opportunity for the wide receivers to produce as well.
And one other thing I want to say to this, Scott, before you go, I want to speak on your Bill O'Brien point really quickly about him being on the hot seat. He needs to be on the hot seat. If we're putting Dan Quinn, a coach who went to the Super Bowl, on the hot seat, we need to put a coach who hasn't even been to the AFC Championship game on the hot seat.
Right. Well, you took the words out of my mouth. Thank you. I appreciate it. If I ever need my voice later on, you certainly helped stretch it out a little bit. But that's exactly where I was going. I think Bill O'Brien needs to accept a lot of responsibility for the quick demise of the Houston Texans. All right, a couple more games I want to talk about last week. Okay, we talked about the Leon Lett impersonation known as DK Metcalf, all right? But was this football game the reason why Jerry Jones should not pay Dak Prescott the amount of money, knowing that he had the Russell Wilson versus Dak Prescott type of thing? Because I know that everybody nowadays, when they compare these two quarterbacks, not only comparing them with ability, but they're comparing them with salary-wise. Because, let's face reality, Jerry Jones did call out his quarterback after this football game, didn't he, Ryan? Right in your backyard.
He did, but at the same time, they're missing two or three of their starting offensive linemen. So even the Seahawks, who don't have hardly any pass rush whatsoever other than Jamal Adams, even after Jamal Adams left the game, they were still able to get to him to disrupt him enough to make issues. And so for me, it's if a quarterback has an offensive line in front of him that can keep him upright, he's going to be able to pick apart defenses. Unless it's the Seattle Seahawks defense, and just about anyone can pick them apart because they don't have a pass rush. But apparently they had enough of a pass rush to get through the guys, the offensive linemen that were there. I still think that Dak Prescott is a fine quarterback. I don't see him as a $40 million a year quarterback. But I think he's a very solid quarterback that is, again, with the tools around him, if you can keep your offensive line healthy, he's going to perform great for the Cowboys.
Yeah,
And so that's kind of my thoughts on him.
I think Dak Prescott should have taken his $33 million and and signed it right then and there. Because after COVID-19, with the lack of money coming in, cash, you should go to the bank as quick as you can. Xavier, what do you want to add to this? So we're going to go to one more game from last week, and then I want to go over a couple here.
Well, when it comes to the game against Seattle, I don't blame Dak Prescott too much for what happened in that game. Dak Prescott actually had a very nice game in that game for his team. If anything, I'm looking at Jerry Jones, and I'm like, you need to do something about this lack of talent on defensive personnel that you have here. Because essentially they were the reason why the Cowboys lost this game, because they allowed Russell Wilson and that dynamic offense to go out on the field and put up all of those points. Dak Prescott, in my opinion, he did his job on Sunday. There were a couple of plays that he didn't make that he could have made, but for the most part, he did his job. It's the Cowboys defense that I'm looking at, and I'm just going, you paid DeMarcus Lawrence a lot of money. You paid Jalen Smith a lot of money. They're not showing up right now. And, of course, they have issues in the secondary. But I'm not one of those people who said that they should go out and sign Earl Thomas, because I don't know how much Earl Thomas has left in the tank, honestly, and he's not a very good locker room guy from everything that we have been told. But he's got to do something here. Maybe he should have thought twice before giving Amari Cooper $100 million, and it should be noted again. This was another big regular season game where Amari Cooper absolutely disappeared on the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb had more of an impact on this game than Amari Cooper did. This is a $100 million receiver, but he's a guy that when he gets brought up in that top 10 wide receiver conversation, Scott and Ryan, I don't understand how. I don't question his talent. I know that he's a guy that's capable of going out there and catching 15 passes for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. But I've seen also on too many occasions where he barely has 2 catches for 10 yards and no touchdowns in games. So, but that defense, those are some things that are going to have to be addressed. The Cowboys are going to have to do something about that defense. That defense is going to be their downfall a lot more than Dak Prescott and that offense is.
All right, let's talk about the final game that probably everybody wish had taken place on Tuesday, so nobody had to be bothered with the presidential debate. But unfortunately, it was on Monday night, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Baltimore Ravens 34-20. Let's face it, Patrick Mahomes looks like, he feels like he has an opportunity to repeat, and all indications early, it's pretty hard to debate his early body of work. And a lot of people are wondering, who's your daddy? And we bring up Pedro Martinez when you talk about Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. So, 2 young quarterbacks that are the future of this league. And then I'll get on to some of this week's game. So go ahead, whoever wants to take the lead on this one.
Yeah, the Chiefs were just on fire. The Ravens, especially, take the Ravens offense to start. The Ravens offense looked out of sync. Lamar Jackson, they were getting enough pressure on Lamar Jackson that he's known for being a running quarterback.
Right.
He can be very crisp with his throws. He can be very on target with his throws. They were getting to him just enough that he did not look comfortable in the pocket. He did not look comfortable when he was throwing. He was not in sync with the receivers. So that's one of the main reasons I think the Ravens really struggled. The Chiefs are one of the better teams at stopping the run. They tend to give up more in the pass game than they do in the run game. And the Ravens offense is built on the run. And that's part of the reason why I think they were really shut down in this game. And then as far as the Ravens defense goes with the Chiefs, there seemed to be some miscommunication. There just was not there were some broken coverages in that Baltimore defense, which you don't expect from Baltimore. But I think the Ravens will bounce back for it, but it's very obvious the Chiefs were on fire and ready to light things up after struggling the previous week against the Chargers.
Yeah, they sent a message on Monday night that they're a team to be reckoned with, too. And what about that running back that they drafted out of LSU? You know who I'm talking about, Ryan?
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, well, I hear this kid's a stud, isn't he?
He's, I mean, for fantasy, I love him.
Yeah,
He catches the ball out of the backfield. He finds the holes quick. He's not, again, a lot of the comparisons were him to Kareem Hunt, who the Chiefs drafted a couple years ago, though they went higher on, end of the first round on Edwards-Helaire instead of like the third round on Kareem Hunt. They're very similar in terms of their speed, their explosiveness, and that sort of thing. He's smaller than Hunt. He's not going to drop his shoulder like Hunt may against a couple of guys, but in terms of their athleticism, they're very similar, and that's why I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire fits into this offense so well.
All right, Xavier, your thoughts on the Chiefs and Baltimore? Then we're going on to a few of this week's games.
Well, I picked the Kansas City Chiefs in my preseason predictions to go back to the Super Bowl and repeat Super Bowl champions.
Okay.
And I will simply just sum this up by saying what I said on Twitter on Monday night. There's Patrick Mahomes, and then there's everybody else. If you want to put somebody else in this conversation, the only other guy I feel that you should put there right now is possibly Russell Wilson.
Right.
And that's just simply because I have a lot of respect for Russell, and we've seen how Russell has had to carry those Seattle offenses for years now.
Okay.
I know everybody loves Lamar Jackson, but I'm going to say it the way I said it on Twitter on Monday night. There are levels to this. There are levels to when it comes down to being a phenomenal quarterback. I like to sum it up the way that the LeBron James and Giannis argument has gone in the NBA. Yes, Giannis won the MVP, but we know that Giannis is not more valuable to his team right now as opposed to what LeBron James is for the Lakers. If you take LeBron off the Lakers, I'm not even sure that that's a playoff team. If you take Giannis off the Bucks have enough talented players, and with the conference they play in, they probably could squeeze in that 8th seed. They probably could.
Right.
But not to detour this from being a basketball to a football conversation, I'm just simply saying there are levels to this. Patrick Mahomes was ranked the number 4 best player in the NFL by a players ranking and a players poll that was taken in a show that was on NFL Network earlier this year. And he's absolutely taken that personal, and he's looked absolutely phenomenal. And Patrick Mahomes looks like that he's not only on his way to winning his 2nd straight Super Bowl, he's on his way to winning his 2nd league MVP in the last 3 years. This is scary stuff that we are seeing from him right now.
Okay, this week's games, we're going to a few of them will be rapid fire style. Okay, the New Orleans Saints take on the Detroit Lions. It looked like Matt Patricia could be staring at 0-4. I definitely had humble pie with the Lions' performance in Arizona. I have a feeling the Lions are going to pull this one out for some crazy reason. I think they will to get to 2-2. I think it could be a 3 or 4 point Lions win to get inspired. But then again, am I drinking the Cardinals-Lions Kool-Aid, or am I going to be drinking lemonade? I don't know, but I'll go with the Lions to win a tight one at Ford Field. Your thoughts about this?
I'm still going with the Saints in this one. I think that the offense still has enough. There are enough weapons for the offense in New Orleans to still get it done, even going up into Detroit. Again, you're not dealing with opposing fan bases. You're not dealing with the noise, and so I think that New Orleans will still pull this one off. I think it could be close, but I still think that New Orleans wins the game.
All right, Xavier.
Well, I definitely believe it's going to be close, but I'm going to pick the Saints to get back on track this week.
Works for me. All right, Seattle and Miami right down the road from us. Boy, how we keep going to those Seattle. Russell Wilson takes his act to South Beach. My goodness.
Obviously, I'm going with Seattle on this one, and not just because I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan, but I think that the offense has more weapons, can get more done. I think that Fitzpatrick could put up a lot of points this week. Although this also could turn into the week that he becomes Fitz tragic again. So you just never know with Fitzpatrick. I do believe that I believe that the Seahawks do win this one though.
Go ahead, Xavier.
I'm going to pick the Seahawks to win this one. just simply too because the Dolphins' defense is a little banged up right now. But I do believe it's at least going to be a fun game to watch. But I'm picking Seattle to win this and go on to be 4-0.
Agreed.
Yeah, I take Seattle going away too, and there won't. And I love jumping on a theme for a broadcast. So tonight there won't be any Leon Lett impersonations. DK Metcalf, okay, definitely will take his talent to South Beach, and the fish will be swimming deep into the sea when the Seahawks go out there and take care of business. Was there a pun intended? Maybe just a little bit. Okay. How about New England at Kansas City?
I think that Kansas City wins this one. I think their defense is playing well enough right now. The defense for New England has been giving up a lot in the secondary, and it's not just Seattle. I think that they've been giving up enough in the secondary with how on fire this offense for Kansas City is. I think it could be a little bit tough for New England to keep up.
Xavier?
I'm going to pick Kansas City to win this game, but it's going to be a tight game. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a fun game to watch. You have the Cam Newton versus Patrick Mahomes scenario there, but also never forget about that coaching matchup of Andy Reid and Bill Belichick. Those are always usually some classic matchups. So it's going to be a tight game. It's going to be close, but I'm going to pick Kansas City to win it, and I believe that this game in particular will be the start of Bill Belichick and the Patriots trying to get another vertical weapon on the outside for Cam Newton to throw the football to take their offense to that next level.
Yeah, I can see Kansas City winning. It's like a 31-21 score. I think New England keeps it close for a while, but then Kansas City pulls away. All right, I've got just two more games to talk about, Buffalo and Las Vegas. It looks like Josh Allen goes to Sin City. Let's just hope that the only masks that are being worn are not only the helmets, but the ones that are supposed to be worn. So how do the Bills fare out in Las Vegas?
I'll take this one first, Ryan. I'm going to pick Buffalo to win this game. I'm going to pick them to win it by at least 2 touchdowns. I'm going to say a score of 31-17. Their defense did not have a very good week last week, and we know them to be a top 10 defense in the league on paper. They're going to look to redeem themselves this week and get themselves back on track. So Buffalo wins, and they advance to being 4-0.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm with you on this one. It doesn't help that Las Vegas, their top wide receiver this week is going to be Hunter Renfrow because Ruggs looks like he's going to miss. Bryan Edwards looks like he's going to be out this week. So the Las Vegas wide receiver core is going to be led by Hunter Renfrow and have Nelson Aguilar and Zay Jones as their number 2 and 3 wide receivers. I think the Buffalo offense just plain has more weapons to utilize, and therefore they will come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go to Chris Berman's saying nobody circles a wagon like the Buffalo Bills, and they're going to circle it out in Las Vegas. So one more game I want to get into called the Ophir Bowl. Boy, we have a few of those this week, don't we? Minnesota against Houston. Something's got to give between Zimmer and O'Brien, but who's the one who is going to give?
Go ahead, Xavier.
Okay. I'm going to pick Houston to win this game because it's going to be a home game for them.
Right.
So I believe that Deshaun Watson will be able to pull out enough magic for them to be able to win the game. And because it's Kirk Cousins and he is known to be a turnover machine,
right,
I believe the Houston Texans defense will finally get a turnover. So Texans win this game, but it's going to be a close game. But they'll finally win this game, and we'll see if that creates any type of momentum for them.
I actually see the Minnesota Vikings winning this game.
Right.
The Houston and here's why: the Houston Texans are one of the worst teams at going up against run games. And if the Minnesota Vikings will get back to what they did last year and just focus the scheme on Dalvin Cook, spelling him with Madison, and just using the pass game more as kind of a almost more like a play action type of thing where they're involving the run game more and playing the pass game off of the run game and can establish that against a Houston Texan team that just bleeds yardage and points to the running backs. I think they could come. I think that Minnesota could actually come out if they can take the pressure off of Kirk Cousins. if Houston gets up at all, Houston's going to win this game because it's going to have to put pressure on Kirk Cousins to perform. But I think if they get the run game going, Minnesota will win.
Well, all I'll say is I think the Texans will win by a field goal, and we'll go from there. So with that said, okay, that concludes the nuts and bolts portion of the broadcast, okay? And I know Ryan Skolrud has been a trooper while he's the one who gets an opportunity to look at the game. Well, neither of us plan to watch it anyway, so it doesn't make any difference. With that said, you can give us an update. Then everybody can go out there and Ryan can give us his information. Xavier will give us his. And, of course, he'll give a preview of tomorrow's Reel in the Rare, and then I'll wrap it up. So what do you got there for a score there, Ryan?
Right now it's 10-10, minute and a half left in the first half. The Broncos are charging down there at the New York. Nope, they just scored a touchdown. Melvin Gordon up the middle scores a touchdown. So it is now 16-10 with the extra point coming with a minute and a half left in the first half. So
old Melvin Gordon, my goodness. And I love it when you talk about the Jonathan Taylor reference. He does make the Indianapolis Colts a lot better. I think the Colts are probably doing cartwheels, and he became available and fell to him. With that said, okay, Xavier McKnight, Ryan Skolrud, why don't you let everybody know how they get a hold of you? Tell everybody about Skull King Sports and lay it out there, Ryan.
All right. Well, you can find us at skolkingsports.com. We do everything from fantasy football advice. We cover the NFL. We cover Major League Baseball, NBA, the major three racing divisions in the world. So NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One. We also cover a little bit of golf. So again, you can find us at skolkingsports.com. You can find us on Twitter at Skull King Sports. You can find us on Instagram, Skull King Sports. You can email me, ryan.skolrud@skolkingsports.com. And one more thing with our fantasy football coverage right now. As of we talk about Fantasy Pros a lot. That's one of the websites that we use to establish our rankings and everything. Right now on Fantasy Pros, I am number 29 through 3 weeks out of 170 some odd fantasy football experts on there. I am number 29 in terms of the accuracy of my rankings so far through 3 weeks. So hopefully I can keep that up throughout this season. We've had a lot of the rankers on our team on our website. We've got 9 of them. We've got, I believe, 4 of them that would be in the top 50 if they were also part of the actual accuracy contest with how accurate their rankings have been. So we've been doing a pretty good job this year of providing the info that you guys need, and we hope that we can keep it up for you.
Well, all I can say is Ryan Skolrud worked with us on WI Network. Then we came over to this platform, and now this is our second year working together. With that said, Xavier, take it away.
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at XTMCKNIGHII. The 2 I's at the end are capitalized. You can follow me on Instagram at XMCKNIGH22. You can send me a friend and follow request to LinkedIn and Facebook just by typing in Xavier McKnight. You can watch more of my content here on the WSAN Network on my YouTube channel just by typing in Xavier McKnight. And Scott and I have a great NBA packed show lined up for you all tomorrow on the Real and the Rare. We'll be talking about Doc Rivers to the Philadelphia 76ers and what that means for the futures of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons there. And who's going to replace Doc Rivers with the Los Angeles Clippers? We're going to get into that as well. We're going to talk some Miami Heat, LA Lakers, what we saw from Game 1, what we can expect going into Game 2, and also Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Boy, they said some things today, and Scott and I are going to give you our thoughts on how we feel about the things that they said.
Looking forward to one thing I love about what we do here, Xavier, is I don't do a lot of NBA stuff. I really haven't gotten into it, whether I found the right expert or not. But, I have a responsibility to cover all sports and try to be fair with everyone that I can do. So I definitely look forward to our basketball analysis as well. In terms of what we're concerned here, if you want to listen to the audio version of fantasy football with myself, Ryan Skolrud, and, of course, now Xavier McKnight makes us a 3-man booth, you can do so by going to Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let me go ahead and say that again. Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. As far as social media is concerned, you can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. That's at Tribune South. Facebook and Instagram, South Florida Tribune Gets It Done. But yes, we have a YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. Please subscribe to that channel, and then you'll be able to get all of our broadcasts on there, and some of the ones that you can get for subscribing to us: the Sports Exchange, No Limits, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, the Real and the Rare, of course, our fantasy show, and the South Florida Tribune podcast. We have a nice balance of sports and non-sports related material. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. We have a lot of content there from our media distribution partners, our columnists. We even have a section for Motor City fans as well, Motor City Monitor, and I'd like to keep ties to the Metro Detroit area, and all of our broadcasts are on there as well. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com, or you can connect with us on LinkedIn, connect with me personally on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth. Now, I should point out, my weekend, I'm actually going to be getting out and covering a sporting event, my friends, and Candy and I are going to be going over to FAU Stadium, where the FAU Owls finally get to play a game. Okay, they had their first one against Georgia Southern postponed because of FAU's COVID issues. My alma mater, the game I really had penciled in last week, got postponed, and then hopefully they'll come up with a reset because of Notre Dame's issues. And so now FAU takes on Charlotte, so Candy will be taking the photos. I'll be up in the press box, albeit with a mask. Won't be able to say as much because nobody will see me. Who knows if they'll be paying attention to what the heck I got to say anyways. But you know what? Even though I'm a Detroit Lion by heart, I've been a caged lion not covering any sports. But you know what? I'm looking forward to getting out of the hole and out of the cave and into a press box where I belong, as a lot of my friends would say, in an element. So any closing thoughts, Xavier or Ryan, about what we've done? One thing I'll say about this broadcast, now that this is our first opportunity as a three-man booth that I've really, truly enjoyed, is, Ryan, we always enjoy your fantasy perspective of it. To me, you do an absolutely outstanding job. Xavier McKnight and I try to fill in the nuts and bolts aspect of the commentary. Since I've been covering this longer than both of you guys have been alive, okay, you get a different approach this way. But I love the ability to connect on all different levels. And that's our responsibility here, to make sure that with Ryan's incredible way of coming up with guys to choose, Xavier and I coming up with nuts and bolts, we have, I think, a very dynamite combination here that I'm looking forward to building on. So, Xavier, any closing thoughts before we wrap up the broadcast?
Yes, and this will be COVID-19 related, because I'm starting to notice some things that are very unsettling and are very concerning. We have governors in certain states that are now easing up on restrictions, and they are now no longer making it a requirement necessarily for face masks to be worn. And if they are to be worn, you can no longer be fined by this. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't be fooled by any of this. Please continue to use your common sense and be vigilant about this, because now more than ever, we need to hunker down and make sure that we are doing everything that we are supposed to do, not just because of the fears of COVID-19, but if we let our guards up, we could potentially be staring a twindemic in the face with COVID-19 and the upcoming cold and flu season. So we need to continue to be vigilant and be responsible and do all of the things that we need to do so that we can make it through this. Once again, wear your mask, wear your gloves, social distance, don't gather in large crowds, but more importantly than anything right now, use your common sense and think for yourself on what you need to do and what you need to encourage other people to do as well, so that we can get through this thing. Because we've seen what the effects of a pandemic can do. I don't even want to think about the effects of a twindemic.
Me either. And all I can tell you in terms of restaurants are concerned, I go there when they open up. Okay, I go to the grocery stores when they open up. Otherwise, I stay away from crowds. And even when this thing all boils over, I like the new habits I've gained. So once again, thanks a lot for joining us, everybody, on Fantasy Football with myself, Ryan Skolrud and Xavier McKnight, constitute three-man booth, and we look forward to bringing you this broadcast again next Thursday. Meanwhile, everybody have a great weekend. Until the next time, good night, everybody.